My name is Erin Johnson, and I am a counselor with the Ascension Employee Assistance Program. And I'm so glad that you are here today to join us for this session. If you are joining us today here for this, it's probably because you as an employee received the Ascension EAP benefit through your employer. And so just wanted to touch on that for a moment. Your EAP provides consultation and short-term solution-focused counseling for employees, for their partners, their spouses, and any dependent kids living in the house. If you'd like more information on your EAP benefit, I'll have some information at the end of the session. I'm also happy to stay on and answer any questions that you might have as well about that benefit after the session's over. Today's session is going to be recorded and we are going to post this on our YouTube channel next week. So if you found this information really good or helpful, or if you think it could be useful for someone else, the session will be available next week if you'd like to share the link or share information about it with anyone. And if you have any questions or comments as we are moving through the presentation today, we love for these presentations to be as interactive as possible. There's a small number of people here. If you feel comfortable unmuting and asking a question or making a comment, you can certainly do that. Or if you feel more comfortable using the chat feature is down along the bottom of the screen under the slideshow there. And so you should be able to access the chat where you can put questions or comments in there as well. I'll try to continue monitoring the chat as I'm talking, but if I do miss any questions, I will swing back at the end and pick those up. So with that said, let's go ahead and dive in. So, are you experiencing a lack of motivation, commitment, or a loss of productivity at work? If this sounds familiar to you, you may be experiencing something called quiet cracking. And quiet cracking is something that results in feelings of unhappiness and disengagement at work. And today we're going to talk about why this happens and some different ways to reverse its effects if this is something that you're experiencing. So specifically, we're going to talk about what quiet cracking is, if you're not familiar with that term. We're going to review the warning signs and kind of ways to tell if this is happening to you. And we are going to explore some really actionable steps that you can take to reverse the effects of quiet cracking. So let's start off by talking about what quiet cracking is. Quiet cracking is a really slow change to how an employee feels about their work. Quiet cracking um, is going to be an employee who looks productive on the outside, but feels kind of empty on the inside. It's an employee who's going to dread going to work, or maybe in the middle of a meeting, dream about quitting their job. Quiet cracking employees also kind of snap at small things that never used to bother them before. They secretly wish for a sick day to get a break from work. And quietly cracking employees are people who used to really be energized by their work, but now they're kind of counting the hours and looking forward to the weekend more. Um, Quiet cracking isn't something that happens overnight. You don't just wake up one day in this place. This is a very slow and gradual process that happens over time. So sometimes the changes can be so subtle, it can be really difficult for us to detect because they're happening so slowly, it doesn't stand out to us. And so we're going to spend some time talking about that today and really looking at some signs and some signals if this to help you identify if this is happening to you. So let's talk a little about lingo. Over the last few years, there have been a number of kind of buzz terms that have popped up related to different dynamics that happen in our workplaces. And one of them you might recall hearing is quiet quitting. Okay. Quiet quitting and quiet cracking sound very similar, but they're actually really different things. And so I just wanted to make sure that everyone's on the same page in terms of the concept of quiet cracking and knowing that we're not referring to quiet quitting. So, quiet quitting refers to people who no longer want to be in their jobs for whatever reason, but they don't want to quit. They don't want to make that commitment of quitting. So what they do instead is they kind of make the decision to quietly quit, which involves them setting some really deliberate boundaries around their work, how much they do, how much effort they put into their job or their tasks. Quiet quitters are really consciously limiting the effort that they're putting into their work. This quiet quitting stems from challenges usually related to work-life balance. That's just really out of sync or out of whack for them. Sometimes people who are quietly quitting kind of like to slack to get out of jobs that they're just no longer wanting. Um, so quiet quitting is really a choice. We're making the choice to quietly quit and to create those boundaries and to limit our effort. On the other hand, quiet cracking is kind of an involuntary thing of an involuntary erosion of interest in our job or of our tasks that we're doing. We want to perform well, but we are just unable to do so. Quiet cracking really stems from being overloaded at work. Overloaded, overwhelmed, too much to do, not enough time. It's also fueled by feeling unappreciated and also when we don't see a promising career path in our current position or with our current employer, if there's not a clear line of progression or growth or development that we can make, that can also fuel feelings of quiet cracking. So quiet cracking, it's not a choice. It's a reaction that we have to working in really high stress, low recognition um, job job positions. Okay, so although these two terms are really different, the information that we're going to share today really does focus on the quiet cracking and how to best help and support yourself or others who might be going through this. So, warning signs. How do we know if we are experiencing this quiet cracking, right? We talked about what some employees might look like or what we might see in employees who are experiencing quiet cracking. But this is kind of a little more focused on the employee here. So when we are quietly cracking, we are we are going to just kind of start to crack under the strain of persistent stress, right? So that's going to look like feeling constantly overwhelmed, right? To the point where the tasks we used to enjoy now feel difficult to complete. We're going to be just working so hard and so much. We've got some cognitive fatigue that really saps our focus and our energy levels. We're going to have decreased engagement. And so this might look different depending on your job. It could be maybe that we're not engaging in meetings, we're not sharing or communicating as much. Maybe we're isolating from our coworkers a little bit. Maybe we're less willing to help with collaborative efforts across our team. We just start to engage less when we're going through this quiet cracking process. We also experience exhaustion that just leaves you just feeling trapped in a job that depletes you, right? Like, I'm so exhausted. I'm just working so hard to get my basic tasks done. I don't have any extra energy to try and help improve the situation. And then another thing we experience when we are quietly cracking is feelings of shame and also self-blame. We believe that it's our fault that our job performance is suffering, but we can't quite pinpoint why. So again, this quiet cracking process is a really gradual decline in motivation, commitment, and productivity. Okay. So this little meme here you might be familiar with. This is a pretty popular image, but this is a really great image that really aligns well with the concept of quiet cracking. So, right with this image on the left, this guy is sitting on the chair. He's got his coffee there, but the whole room is on fire and it's full of smoke. Sometimes that's kind of what it feels like when we're quietly cracking, right? There are so many things to do. You're surrounded by things that need your attention, your time, your effort. You've got a to-do list. There's just so much that needs to be done. But it's just too much and it's hard to know where you start. And so, right, so we kind of adopt the, gosh, there's so much to do, but this is fine. I'll get it done. It's okay. Right, we don't have many options, or we feel like we don't have many options aside from just letting the fire rage around us. And we drink our coffee like normal and manage the fire the best that we're able to do. So this can be a really good analogy for the concept of quietly cracking. In March of 2025, Talent MLS conducted a study and found that 54% of American workers reported experiencing the unhappiness and burnout that can cause quiet cracking, which is a huge, I mean, that's over half of the workers that were surveyed. So that's a pretty significant number. 1 in 5 or 20% experience this engagement or this disengagement constantly or frequently, which results in decreased performance, lower morale, and a high risk of burnout. So, this is a lot of people that are experiencing this quiet cracking. And so, again, one reason why we're doing this presentation today is to help raise awareness for people who might be experiencing it. Because a lot of times what ends up happening is when we are quietly cracking, we're kind of struggling silently through it. We're trying to figure out what's going on. We're having a hard time putting the pieces together. But it can be really hard to do that. And so today, we're going to hopefully help you recognize the signs of quietly cracking, identify if this is something you're experiencing, and find some ways to take action to help things improve. So, because quiet cracking is such a subtle process, I just wanted to make sure we spend some time doing a little bit deeper dive into some of the indicators that you might be quietly cracking. So, across the next few slides, we have some questions around different areas. And so, as I read through these questions, just kind of make a mental note or make a hash mark on a sheet of paper if you experience this. Okay, there are 14 of these questions in total. If you don't experience them, that's fine, that's great. But if this is something that resonates for you, certainly put a mark down for that. So, around physical and emotional wellness, do you wake up feeling exhausted or drained rather than refreshed? If you do, give yourself a point. Am I feeling irritable or experiencing sleep issues related to work or possibly related to work? If so, give yourself a point. Am I going through the motions of my job with little enthusiasm left? Or do I feel emotionally detached from my work and my colleagues? Okay, so here's our next category is going to be workplace engagement and performance. And same thing, if the statement on the screen resonates with you, give yourself a mark or a point for that. Is my productivity declining or am I making more mistakes than normal? Have I stopped contributing in meetings or volunteering for new initiatives? Am I avoiding breaks or working overtime, leading to further depletion? And last in this category, am I feeling stuck in my current role with no clear career growth path? Okay, so give yourself 1 point for each of those that resonates for you. And then perceptions and connections. Do I feel undervalued by my supervisor or my organization? If so, give yourself a point. Do I feel like my manager doesn't listen to my concerns or support my needs? Am I feeling like I no longer belong or align with my company? If so, give yourself a point. Am I hesitant to ask for help or delegate when I'm feeling overwhelmed? Okay. And our last two questions here focus on future outlook. Okay. Do I feel secure in my job today, but anxious about my future at this company? If so, give yourself a point. And am I looking for new jobs or thinking about quitting often despite keeping my current job? So give yourself a point. So go through and add up how many points you had. Okay, this is not scientific. This is there's nothing evidence-based behind this, but this is really more to raise awareness because all of those questions are really indicators that we could be experiencing quiet cracking. And again, because this is such a subtle process, I wanted to dive in a little bit deeper in helping people figure out if this is something they're experiencing. So there were 14 total questions. If you answered close to all 14, that's a really good indicator that you might be quietly cracking or more than half. But at the same time, if you only answered 2 or 3, I don't want to dismiss the idea of quietly cracking, right? You could maybe be in a very early process of this disengagement or this process towards burnout happening. And so hopefully this just helps raise some awareness for you to see if you've got some of the hallmark things or the hallmark experiences that people have as they're starting this process of quietly cracking. So there are also a few other things that can contribute to quiet cracking, right? Anyone can experience this, but there are some things that make us a little more susceptible. And so people who have those perfectionistic tendencies are a little more prone to quietly cracking, right? When we are a perfectionist, we set the bar sky high for ourselves. And when that bar is met, we move it further. And so people who have those perfectionistic tendencies, right, there's no finish line. They never reach a point where they feel like they're happy or doing good work. And so it can just lead to an endless cycle of pressure to perform well, which is exhausting and can feed into that quiet cracking. Just like people pleasing can. So, right, for people who are people pleasers, they like to do anything they can to avoid saying no to another person or disappointing them, even if that means they're taking away from their own time, their own energy, their ability to do their own work. They will help other people over saving time or energy for themselves. Over-functioning people, these are people who do more than their fair share of work at home, that work at home and just in life in general. They're always busy, they're always doing things, they're always offering to help, they're always filling in the gap because they can and because they like to. Sometimes for over-functioning people, doing all of those things really helps provide a sense of control, and that brings a sense of peace. And so there's kind of a cycle there with that, but that over functioning and never resting can really also feed into the development of quiet cracking. People who are experiencing or holding on to feelings of resentment are also more prone. So if you're secretly feeling unappreciated or taken advantage of, or taken granted of at work, but on the outside, you're appearing like a rock star employee who's getting their work done and meeting all the expectations, that can also lead to quietly cracking, as can those people who are just addicted to being productive, right? These are the people who are always busy, who are always doing something. They just can't rest either. So downtime feels like wasted time to them. So they keep pushing and pushing and pushing through everything. So people with these qualities are inclined to just keep working harder, keep working to be more perfect, to keep doing things well, to keep making people feel happy. And so they just push through the hard and the stressful things, which can really exacerbate that experience of quiet cracking. And then there are also some factors that can happen in the workplace that can influence our quiet cracking experience. So one of these is needing to do more with less. And I think this is a really common thing that's happening in a lot of companies right now, right? There's budget cuts, there's hiring freezes, other cost-saving measures that are leading us to have more work to do, right? Needing to do more with less really adds more stress. And when we're in that more stressful place for a longer period of time, that can fuel the experience of quiet cracking. Digital upgrades and adopting new technology, right? Technology is constantly changing depending on the kind of work you do or the company you work for. Sometimes we might have one big technology upgrade for a new system or a new software or something like that. But some companies, some kinds of work require constant upgrades of technology. And whenever we're doing that, we're needing to upskill, we're needing to learn new skills, and we're needing to learn new ways to approach things. And that can be exhausting. Another contributing factor is just not having a real clear career path moving forward, or even if there's not a lot of opportunity for growth and advancement within the company that you're working for, that can feel really stagnating. And then another contributing factor is a lack of support from managers or leaders, whether they're burnt out themselves, whether maybe supporting employees is an area of growth for a manager or leader, or maybe recognition, like recognizing employees and their hard work and their accomplishments is maybe something that's not a manager or leader's style. Those are all things that can contribute to feelings of quiet cracking. Okay, so what do we do, right? What do we do to stop this process of quiet cracking? And so that's what we're going to take a look at now. Um, the good news is that quiet cracking isn't a personal flaw or a problem with you. Um, so often we feel like it's us, right? We feel like there's something wrong with us, that we're not meeting the expectation, or we're losing interest in our work, or we're not motivated. If you have identified through the course of this presentation that you might be quietly cracking, that's really just a signal that a reset is needed. Okay. It's a signal to let you know that the way you've been pushing through isn't helpful, right? So for some people, that might be drinking a few cups of caffeine or a few cups of coffee for the caffeine in the morning. For some people, it might be like mustering all their willpower to get through the day. Some people might be just knowing that when they get home, they're just going to go right to bed and that'll help make it all better, right? Like, so quiet cracking is a sign that what you're doing right now isn't working. And so hopefully the tools that we'll talk about coming up here will help you find that reset that you need to help reverse and heal the effects of quiet cracking. So the first thing you can do is to name it, right? Half the battle is realizing you're quietly cracking. If we don't know that we're quietly cracking, we can't make any changes to try and improve or remedy the situation. So, right, when we name the fact that we are struggling or battling with quiet cracking, it's part of it is accepting that we're not the problem, right? We're not lazy, we're not bad at handling stress. There's something bigger that's happening. Okay. Having an awareness of the struggles that you're experiencing gives you the power to do something about it. Knowledge is power. And so we're going to take this knowledge today and we're going to turn it into some good things that you can do to help make things better. Naming it also takes away the feelings of shame, right? So acknowledging that we're quietly cracking can reduce those feelings of shame that we might be experiencing, because usually we're internalizing it and we're seeing it as a problem with us, but it's not. And so hopefully learning about quiet cracking helps take away some of that shame if you're feeling that. Another important thing you can do is to check your alignment, right? And you can do this by asking yourself, are my habits in my job fueling me or are they draining me? Okay. That sounds like a simple question, but it's kind of a big, deep question. And so sometimes that might be something that you might have some initial thoughts on right now. But as you go through the week, think about that a few times. Is this part of my job fueling me or is it draining me, right? Some parts of our job could really fuel us and could really be exciting. We could really love them. And other parts could be incredibly draining and difficult. And maybe that's where our low motivation comes in. Or maybe it's the whole job and all the tasks across the board. It'll be different for everyone. But once you reflect on this question of, am I being fueled or am I being drained? It's important then to take action. Okay. If you're being fueled and things are good across the board, then quiet cracking might not be something that you're experiencing. But if you're feeling drained and you were really resonating with some of the pieces we talked about related to quiet cracking, then it's going to be really helpful to find that alignment, right? What can we do to start refilling our energy tank? And so some of those action steps we can take involve improving stress. Whatever that looks like for you. It could be finding a better balance between work and life outside of work. It could be making sure you're taking breaks while you're at work. It could be delegating tasks that aren't yours, but you've been doing them. So find some ways to improve that stress. Adjust your habits to align with your priorities and your values. And so this is again, this also sounds simple, but this could be really big too. This could be as simple as I'm needing to take a better care of myself, so I'm going to make sure that I am taking my lunch break and I'm not doing any work at home at night. Or this could be bigger and saying my career goals have me going in this direction, and this where I am right now isn't helping me move on to that place. And so sometimes that leaves us looking for a better job or a job that's a better fit for what our long-term goals are. So if we are out of alignment, we're going to have a greater sense of quiet cracking. And when things are in alignment, that helps heal and improve those feelings of quiet cracking. Another important step to help with quiet cracking is to stop doing all of the things, right? If you're overworked and your to-do list doesn't seem to end, it's important to start setting some boundaries and start reining in the things that really need your time and attention and letting go of the things that don't. So spend some time reflecting on how you respond to others. Do you say yes a lot to others when they ask you for something, for help with something, to do a task, to cover for them, to take extra hours, to take more part of a project that's happening? Are you comfortable saying no? For some people, saying no is incredibly hard. Um, and sometimes it's hard to think about what's difficult about saying no. Is it just finding the words to say no? For a lot of people, it's what's lying underneath is the disappointment that they worry they'll cause for other people. Okay, so if your default setting is to say yes to other people, it's going to be important to start saying no sometimes. Okay. When we say yes to something, we're always saying no to something else, but we don't necessarily recognize that. So if I agree to help with a project that's going to require extra time from me, that's great. It's kind of me to do that. But at the same time, that time I'm devoting to this new project means I'm going to have less time to actually do my regular work tasks. And is that a trade-off that I'm willing to make? It might be appropriate to say no. Okay. And rest. I mentioned rest a couple times earlier in the presentation. Rest is a really important part of healing and kind of reversing the process of quiet cracking. Often, when people think of rest, I think, and then maybe this is a cultural thing, but we think of that rest as doing nothing, right? It's sitting around, it's sleeping, it's napping. But really, I mean, that's part of it, but rest can be so much more than that. Restful activities can really refill your energy tank. Okay, so think about it for a minute. What refills your energy tank? What gives you energy? What leaves you feeling refueled? For some people, again, taking a nap, could be going for a walk, reading a book, spending time doing an activity that you enjoy, painting, fishing, golfing, working in the garden. There's so many different things. A lot of times that those are hobbies or things that we enjoy doing. Listening to music can be a great way to rest and refill our tank. So it's really important that you're giving yourself some time to rest. Some people are really good at this, and for some people, this feels really incredibly difficult. If you don't know how to rest, or if you haven't given yourself time to rest, it's important that you try to find ways to do that. So you can try some things you've done before that you've enjoyed, and maybe you'll continue enjoying them. Or you can also try some activities that you haven't done before and reflect on how you feel afterwards. If that's something that has kind of left you drained and not very excited, that's probably not going to be something that will help you feel rested. But if you have an activity that you try that does help you feel re-energized, then definitely continue incorporating that into your routine. Okay, and last, to help stop the process of quiet cracking, be sure to connect with someone for some support, right? Quiet cracking really thrives in isolation. And I think as employees, when we're in that quiet cracking place, we're really kind of waiting for our workplace to do something to fix the things, right? To fix the overloaded work or to maybe switch out a manager or whatever it might be, right? But we don't want to wait for our workplace to fix issues because they might not be working on those issues, or maybe they're working on them in a slower time frame. And really, there's a lot of things that you can do within your control to help make this feel better. So talk with someone, right? That could be a friend, it could be a family member, a mentor, a coworker if appropriate, or a counselor, right? And when we're talking with these people, it can start to become clear to us if we need a reset, if we need a whole new role, or maybe we just need a break from what we're doing. If you feel like you want to talk with someone, EAP is a great source of support for things like quiet cracking. So don't hesitate to use your EAP benefit too. If you feel like you're trying some of the strategies in this presentation, but you feel like you need a little bit more, certainly reach out to us and one of our counselors would be happy to meet with you. In closing, okay, if you notice these cracks are quietly forming, don't ignore them, right? You deserve better than just surviving to get through a day of work. You deserve a career that and a life that fuels you, doesn't drain you. So if you feel like you're quietly cracking, get curious about what's fueling those cracks, the bad habits that you've normalized, or the misalignment that you've been ignoring, and really work to start finding those ways to help yourself reset and reverse the quiet cracking process. So today we've talked about a lot of things here in this half hour. We talked about what quiet cracking is. We reviewed those warning signs, and we talked about some actionable steps to reverse the process. If you have any questions, I'm happy to try and answer those now if you want to put them in the chat. Or again, it's still a pretty small group, so if you'd like to take yourself off mute and ask a question, you can certainly do that. Otherwise, if there are no questions, we always like to just encourage you to take a moment to pick out one piece of information from this session that you'll take away today and start applying to your regular life, your work life, your home life. But what is one piece of information that you can start applying to help mitigate the effects of quietly cracking? Okay. I will stay here for some questions if anyone has any, but if you ever would like to contact your EAP, here's our contact information. We are available by phone and by email. Those are on the screen there. If you have questions about how the benefit works or you'd like to learn more, certainly don't hesitate to reach out. Otherwise, our website there, ascensioneap.org, is a great resource with lots of good information. You can meet our staff. We've got a lot of resources on there. We've got a book bag of materials or of book recommendations. And we also have a new web page, or new page on our website called EAP Counselors Corner. And it just highlights some resources for taking care of ourselves and coping during uncertain times. The world's really stressful right now. There are a lot of people that are feeling the effects of that stress. And so wanted to make sure we provide some good information there. So you can check that out as well if that would be of interest. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so glad that you were able to be here. I will go ahead and stop the recording. And if you have any questions, I will stay here for those if you feel more comfortable with that.